Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with a movie called The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Please check out my books, links in the description, to Amazon, where you can find all my books, Woke Us Dan, a novel, Hollywoke, another novel, and of course, the Pineys comedy horror. Now, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Ooh, bloody. They find this guy on the road, and he may have killed, I don't know, someone in his family or something. And this is based on a true story way, way, way back in the days of 1981. For some of you, like me, that's hilarious because the sort of portrayal here is that this is olden times, right? And the amusing thing is, back in the 80s, we used to have movies, yeah, believe it or not, and they would also do movies that took place 40 or 50 years prior and act like it was 1,000 years ago and that witches existed. And see, this is 1981. And this is based on some kind of story, I'm sure, but they would use that period piece. So say if it was the 80s, it'd be something in the 40s, right? So they would use the fact that there were no phones, no videotape, right? And they would use that as like, this is why these people are trapped in the woods kind of thing. Now it's like part of the thrill for, I think, modern audiences would be that, oh my God, there's no internet to look this stuff up. They had to look in books. And also, too, there were psychics, running around scamming people. So in this one, the psychic is helping the police, and they see a witch's totem. Oh, witch's totem. That's so meaningful. But see, they say it like, oh, in the 80s, people would have known what that was. Yeah, witch's totem. That would have been a thing in the 80s. Now, no, it's ancient. It's old, But people in the 80s, they were kind of close to the ancient times, so they know what a witch's totem is. No, it's I never even heard of a witch's totem. It's probably something, they made up for the movie. Depending on the cultural background of the witch, there are really witches in every culture, which is kind of interesting. But this is, it's about demonic possession. Here she is living the dark vision. And what's the name's in it from The Fringe? Let me see if I can find him. No. There he is. The guy from The Fringe, the creepy professor guy. He's great in those roles. So every victim, every case. So The Conjuring is already a franchise, so I assume it ties into the other Conjurings. But this is, sort of the big one, I guess. But, the name doesn't really scare me. Conjuring, the devil made me do it. See, the devil made me do it used to be kind of a phrase like, oh, I'm getting a little naughty. The devil made me do it. Oh, I ate that chocolate cake. The devil made me do it. So I don't think they really should have gone with this if they wanted it to be a serious horror movie. Although it is dated, so maybe that's why they picked it. But I think it kind of conjures the wrong tone. Coming soon. So we don't have a date on this movie yet. And no credits. So, but these movies, they're kind of all the same. They're camera tricks and jumps and music designed to get you a little hyped up. It's not, it doesn't look very interesting to me. I mean, the period piece, maybe, only because, I lived in the 80s, so it'd be kind of fun to see stuff from the 80s and how they portray the 80s. How somebody, in the modern era portrays the 80s. That's why I like Stranger Things, right? It was a little bit nostalgia. And then you watch them condense all the 80s things in like a very short period of time. It's like, when the kids in the Stranger Things not only had Ghostbusters costumes, they weren't cheap things with like plastic masks. They were like actual costumes, like way too nice. Way too nice to be actual Ghostbusters costumes that kids would buy. And so that part of it would be kind of fun. But, the actual movie itself, like, nah. Psychics, were never really much of a thing. People would see them, yeah, it's a big scam. So, but using the past, you can kind of make things bigger. You can romanticize the past and make things bigger than they were. Because, most of the people who this movie is aimed at probably aren't old enough to have remembered it in the 80s. They were probably born after the 80s. So, in some respects, this is sort of a knock to people my age who might go see it for nostalgia purposes. People who were born, say, 20 years after, who don't really remember the 80s, but they kind of have nostalgia for it. There's a lot of people who love the 80s for some reason. And then, for the modern era, it's just another monster movie. But I'm not knocking it. I mean, maybe it's okay. But, in a movie like this, the first act will be they discover them. And then they start investigating and realize there's more to the case than they realize. And then the psychic comes in, probably in the second act. Or you see her in the first act, but then she shows up in the second act and starts sniffing around. And she really starts to make progress because it is very supernatural. And then things start really happening, and maybe the witch kills somebody, and it makes the case even crazier. And then by the third act, things are flying around, and people are getting killed and sucked into hell, and until they kill the witch somehow. So, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Coming soon, probably this year, I guess.